This is a brief video clip to discuss the differences in using folders and files versus tags. Tags are not well known because we've been so accustomed to using folders and files, but they do have some advantages over folders and files. For this tutorial, I'm using files that I would use when working with students in their dissertation process. Over time, I've accumulated hundreds of different files that can be useful in different situations for students, and they need to be categorized in some way that makes them easy to find based on their content. So I use tags. However, most people would use folders and files, so we're going to start with that. We're going to take these files here and we're going to group them by what we think is the main thing that they address. So when we look at this, we first see an array of different kinds of files, and if we look at this one, we see one that says writing. Here's another one that says writing. So let's start off by creating a folder that will actually, let's go ahead and highlight these two. We'll create a folder that will store these two so that we can find them, and we'll call it writing. We also see several files here that have to do with literature review. So let's go ahead and categorize those first. Now, research literature would be a good part of a literature review, as would arguments and evidence. So let's go ahead and highlight that as well. Here's one, a literature review outline, another one, literature review analogy. And here's some style, we'll save the style checks for later. References would go with that. Scholarly and other works chart would go with that. So, and then writing a literature review would go with that. Now we have an issue with some of these. We're going to come back and look at those. Where would we file this, for instance? Writing or literature review. So we already begin to see a few of the limitations of folders and files. But anyway, I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to make a folder called Literature Review. That leaves us with problem statement information. Let's make that a little wider. Problem statements. 5 Whys is an article that I use sometimes to help students figure out a problem. Top 10 style checks, that actually goes under writing, so let's drag and drop it down here to writing. And that leaves us with these two that we'll put under problem statement. So when we come here, we'll make a new folder and we'll call it problem statement. So we now have these folders for the files that we were working with. We can see those if we open this up as such. And in general, we can find files that relate to literature review, problem statement, or writing. However, there are some overlaps that create a dilemma when we use this type of filing. For instance, here's a writing a literature review. It's about literature review, but it's also about writing. Here is a literature review analogy, which is great. It's about literature review, but it also could be used as a tutorial. Here's a template of a literature review outline, and we could use that as a tutorial of sorts. Here's a formulating the problem statement tutorial. It says tutorial. Here's an article that might be used to help a student with a problem statement. It doesn't say anything about problem statement, but it's related to it. Here is top 10 style checks for PhDs, which has to do with writing, but it also has to do with literature review. So what we have is overlap with these files, and the only way that we might be able to resolve that is to take these and copy them from leave them in this folder, copy them to the other appropriate folders. That's going to get insane with thousands of or hundreds of documents that you'll accumulate over the time of doing your dissertation. So that's not a feasible way to do it. So let's discuss tags and see what tags would do to help us. Tags can be used on a Mac or a PC. They're just implemented in different ways. For this video tutorial, I'm using a Mac, and so I'm using Finder and the tags features that go with that. So let's go ahead and tag 2 or 3 of these files just to get an idea of what we're talking about here. So we found this one here, and this one, and this one, and we could call these tutorials as well. And we're going to label these tutorials because those are things that might help a student in the writing process. So the way I do this is to assign, and I've already got lots of tags here, so just ignore those and pretend that you're starting from scratch. First of all, we would label these tutorials, type the word tutorial in, and once you have that in, it stays in and you can use it over and over and over. So those are now labeled tutorials, and you can see the list of tags as we add them to the files. Another obvious one is literature review. So we know that these two obviously go as a part of the literature review. Here's one that's named literature review. Here's another one, literature review. And here's one, literature review. So we can see that those are obviously the files related to a literature review. So let's go ahead and tag those. We don't care if it's already got a tag. We'll go ahead and add another one. You can add as many tags as you want, and that's the beauty of using tags. Okay, so now we see literature review for certain documents and tutorial in literature review for other documents that could be used for tutorials about a literature review. These two have to do with the literature review, but they also have to do with references. So what we might do here is tag those references, call them reference, and also literature review. And so we have those two labeled a little bit differently than that. The reason that's capitalized is that's just something that I did when I created that tag. Otherwise it would be lowercase. Now writing, we know that these three have to do with writing. We could actually say formulating problem statements has to do with writing to some extent, as does obviously writing a literature review. So we could tag these five as writing, and writing a literature review, we might actually add another tag to it and call it a tutorial, because it might be used as a tutorial as well. So we see that what we've done is we've got the files still in the same folders they were in, but now they have multiple tags. So we're going to see how that works. Let's look at the real power of using tags. First, we'll just go ahead and close these folders. We don't need them open. Let's say that you were looking for something about literature review. You would obviously go to this folder, and you would probably find most of the things you wanted for literature review. You might not find everything. Say you went to writing, you definitely wouldn't find everything in the writing folder. You would only find 3 files. Yet we know there are more files that pertain to writing. So let's go up here and search for tags. So we want everything that has to do with writing. And we search for tags, and we now see that we have 5 files that are in different folders. So we're able to pull those out and see what we have as far as writing, things that might help us with writing. And we could have added other tags to that as well. Let's say I want tutorials about writing. I have writing already tagged. I'll add tutorial, and what happens is my list changed and went back to 4. So I have 4 different documents that are labeled are marked as tutorials, and 4 that are marked as writing. Notice this one came from literature review as well. So would we have picked up these other 3 had we been looking for tutorials? No. If we were looking in this folder, we wouldn't have. So tags give us a way of sorting through files. Let's look at a broader scale. So let's go ahead and look at these 3 folders, but let's do a search for tutorial. And you see now, because this is the full folders, you see now that there are a lot more documents here that would be considered tutorials. What about literature review? We search for literature review. We have a lot of documents there, and if we want to look at tutorials about literature review, we now have those 3 documents there. Looks like we have a duplicate here. So actually one's a Word document, one is a PDF. So you see that tags allow us to search through all of our files, and I could go to my Mac and find every single document on this entire computer that would be called a tutorial. So that's how tags work, and you can use those on both Macs and PCs. For more information about working on your dissertation, thesis, or just in general about working on academic papers, go to my blog at Everything Academic Online and subscribe, and you'll receive notifications for new posts.